I first came about learning about you through Play It Loud, because I was getting familiar with Adam and seeing what he's done and so on. And then,
so do you know Adam?
Yeah, I've talked to him before on the
cool.
show on more than one occasion. And as a matter of fact, I just messaged him the other night too, because he was up.
Yeah, man, he's great.
He didn't win the award, unfortunately. But so we were talking, and we've been keeping up with each other for quite some time now. But with what he's been doing as of late, I've been keeping up with him, letting him know, hey, I checked this out here and there, and I saw this episode. The one episode I came across that I told him that I like what I've heard on this episode was one featuring you, where the first song you had played was "Deliver Me."
Yes.
And so I heard that, and then I heard the remaining episode, and I messaged Adam right away, and I said, this guy, Adam Aguilar, he is incredible. I was he's a really good friend of mine. I was like, well, please tell him I'm a fan now, because I love what I heard. And so then I've been keeping up. But what I was trying to find here with you, though, specific, was trying to get some more insight outside of what I've already heard from Play It Loud that I could try to delve more into here. But there's really not a whole lot I could find as far as like interviews concerned, with the exception, I think, one that you did for, I forgot the name of the
Studios.
YouTube channel. Yeah, it was some VFX, or I can't remember what the channel was.
Yeah, that's Beau, VEUX.
Yeah,
that's actually where I made my record. So, and he's doing James that owns that studio. My friend James Connor, he's doing like his own little web series out of there too. He wants to start like a little bit of a local Tiny Desk-ish thing there so everyone that's been making the records there, or even other people that he's friends with locally and that he knows, they've been doing like in-house performances and interviews there too. So
having seen that being like I think it was a 2-minute snippet that I came across, that was the only one I could come across, at least as of like last week, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
But so off of that, so I decided to look into a catalog of performances you've done, and quite a few I've come across. I think as far as back as like 2010 or 2011, if I recall correctly, that you did with your brother and obviously your band as well too. I forgot the name of the country song that you guys did, but it was a cover of I may have written it down here, because I wrote a lot of stuff down here.
I don't do a whole lot of country stuff, so it might have been like a Keith Urban song or something like that.
Possibly, I don't remember, because I wrote down the stuff, and I was like, let me just focus on this, because once I start, it's hard for me to kind of filter out where I want to begin. But
sure.
But anyway, so here's what I wanted to get across, because I try to be very cognizant about not asking the same questions that's been asked before, because a lot of what Adam did with you, because here's the thing that he had said that really struck me about how he looked at you, which was I'm not sure if you remember, he had asked you, tell me the time when you had figured out that you were really good, and don't be humble, but just tell me straight up when you felt like you were good. And then you pretty much gave an answer about how your father was more or less kind of like that meter where you looked at, if he's reacting this way, then I know I got something.
He says it's good.
Right. So having heard that, I actually want to get more insight about your background here. And this is the reason why I'm pointing this out, because it's funny, because, I know you're Hispanic, but that's not the reason why I was gravitating to you, because when I listened to you, just hearing your voice, it didn't matter to me what the background was. But what was interesting that I wanted to point out was because when I listened to the catalog of music that you play, a lot of his soul music, which I know is a major influence for your vocals and the style of play and whatnot.
Yes.
But I noticed that because I didn't find any, at least as far as I could find, that I didn't see any sort of Latin music infused in the music that you currently play.
Yeah.
The reason I'm bringing this up here is because it's not something that I'm suggesting that, why haven't you? It's not that. I was curious because it dawned on me to ask, did you, as a result of your Hispanic background, was there any indication for, or at least any sort of like request, or whether it be from the Hispanic community or people of different races that would say, hey, listen, can you play these type of music? And you're like, well, it's not my style of music. I mostly play these type of songs. And I'm actually wondering what type of form of critique or resistance have you met because of that? Because the music I've come across that you play is strictly mostly like I said, soul, rock and roll, country, but not necessarily a whole lot of Latin style music that I can recall that has been infused with the music. So I was curious about what that was like for you, because I would imagine to some degree you might have felt some sort of resistance from the community, if you will.
Yeah, no. Living in Oklahoma City, there's just not a whole lot. We have a Latino community here. of which that I'm involved in from time to time. And but where I live in the state, there's just not that kind of presence. It's actually, we're getting more and more though, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
There's actually a venue down the street from my house that's featuring more Latin music and more Latin artists. And I have talked to a lot of people about doing my own Latin stuff as well.
Right.
I actually, for about 10 years ago, I was involved in this thing called the Texas Music Extravaganza. And it was a tribute to Doug Som's life. I don't know if you're familiar with the Texas Tornadoes.
Yes,
but they were, you know, they kind of introduced the genre of Tejano rock and roll. With, you know, they made it popular. I wouldn't say maybe they didn't so much, you know, introduce it. I think there's some other acts that were doing it too, but they definitely helped make it popular. And so I was doing a lot of stuff with them back in like 2010 to 2012 down in San Antonio.
Right.
And so I did a lot of that, of the Tejano rock with them just by proxy. And I loved doing it. And I've thought about doing it more and more here lately. Actually, it's funny that you asked me that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So answer me about this here, because you know, for example, like when you go out, I'm actually curious about how you go out and play, and when someone hears you and then they see you, have you ever gotten any sort of like reaction from somebody like, oh, I didn't realize you play soul music coming from a brown man? Like, have you ever had any experience like that growing up?
Not really.
Okay.
I really haven't had that kind of reaction. Especially with like the Native American community that we have in Oklahoma. Yeah. A lot of people that see me for the first time that don't know who I am, they'll think, you know, they'll say, hey, what tribe are you? And I'll go, Mayan. But yeah. Well, no, I wouldn't say there's been any kind of like backlash or anything, or even people being negative or positive in either way. I think every time. So it's more neutral in that respect? Yeah, really neutral as far as like my ethnicity is concerned.
Okay, so and basically from what I'm understanding from what you're telling me is that has been a single major pushback because of your skin color, the type of music you play, and then as a result of that, well, why don't you play these type of music because of your background? Nothing. No,
every time Latinos see me for the first time, they do ask me, why don't you play some Spanish music? And the honest to God truth is, I mean, I do know Spanish, but I just didn't grow up in my house speaking Spanish. My mom comes from an Italian background and my dad's Mexican. Mm-hmm. So we spoke English, but we listened to a lot of Latino music. Like mariachi music was big in my house. My grandma would have, you know, Vicente Fernandez playing, or Antonio Aguilar, or, you know, like all these mariachi style artists. And as well, you know, like Luis Miguel was big in the house. So I grew up with all that stuff. Like I know a lot of those songs like the back of my hand at this point. And like I have all my mariachi, my favorite mariachi songs. And I've actually thought about doing different takes on those as of late, really wanting that to be something that I do eventually. My grandma's no longer here with me, but I know she if there was anyone that really wanted me to do Spanish music, it was my grandma. She was just always like, Mijo, when are you going to do, you know, when are you going to do some Spanish music? And I would always just tell her it's coming. Mm-hmm. And she saw me do some. When I was doing that deal with Texas Tornadoes, I did like some Juanes covers. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, I used to cover Adios Lepido. And that was a fun one to do, and I've been thinking about revisiting that one. But I've also been thinking about writing some songs in Spanish too. So as I've gotten older.
So do you? Here's my question with you on that, because obviously playing Spanish music and even singing it in Spanish, because it changes a lot of the gears and how you approach the music,
Sure.
I would imagine, right? So
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
you're thinking about that, though, is there a little self-consciousness about, can it work? Can I actually pull it off?
Yeah,
Because okay.
yeah. No, I think there's all those things, and regardless of the type of music I go into playing, because I like to, I'm pretty diverse in what I listen to
Right.
and what I enjoy. It just kind of comes across as the soul thing, because that's just the way my voice is. That's just
Right.
kind of the way I sing. So I think even if I did songs in Spanish, it would still be that same kind of flavor, but it would just be in Spanish instead. But yeah, no, it definitely, it's intimidating, I think, although I can't speak Spanish. I wouldn't say that I'm just a fluent Spanish speaker. I think that you're not a fluent speaker unless, you can just roll it off without thinking about it. Sometimes I gotta pause and think about, okay, how do I say this here?
Yeah,
Or how
yeah,
do
I
I
know what
phrase
you
this?
mean. Yeah.
So to me, that's not a fluent speaker, but so in that regard, I think that's the most intimidating part for me.
So okay, so now as as the years have gone by, because clearly it's obvious that you're trying to expand on other areas with your music, but what I was wondering to know about, when it came to, once you started realizing about how you wanted to go about with your music, and then you test the waters in certain areas, I'm wondering if there's anything that you've done that you look back and you think, man, it didn't work out as well as I thought it did, because maybe at the time it did turn out as good,
Mm-hmm.
that at that point, but then looking back at it or revisiting the song, playing it again, you may haven't played for a while, that you realize that it was nowhere near as good as I thought it was. So therefore, I'm going to change this formula to something that would hopefully better my musicianship, if you will. So anything of that sort of comes to mind for yourself about how you look at something that didn't
Yeah,
turn out as well as you thought?
there's not something in particular that jumps out at me, but as you know, I'm sure, talking to other artists and being an artist yourself, we're our own harshest critics, right? So
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm sure there's podcasts that you look back on and go, oh man, I didn't ask that the way I wanted to, or there's definitely recordings that I'll listen to myself and I'll say, man, I could have done this better. I should have sang this a certain way. Or I'll see live clips of myself and I'll cringe at myself because I'm like, oh man, I sound like garbage on that part. But I think we're just, like I said, I think everything I do, I'm just continually looking to just get better.
mm-hmm.
But no, there isn't one thing in particular that sticks out to me and I'm like, man, I just really shouldn't have done that.
Do you go back and revisit stuff that you've done? Like in this case, let's talk about like performances, because there's quite a few that I've come across you've done. But do you ever go back out of your way to find things you've done in the past to see how you would have progressed from that point to where you are with us now, where you can look at how
Oh,
you
no
feel?
doubt. Well,
Okay.
you say that you came across some videos of mine like from 10 years ago. And
Yeah.
I mean, I have grown so much as a performer and as a musician and as a singer, really. I
Yeah.
think my at 43 years old, I'll be 44 soon. I think at 43, my voice is in the best condition it's ever been in.
Mm.
And I've worked hard to get to that point. I've really, in my older age, I've gotten to a point where I'm like, all right, I got to drink X amount of water. I got to like get in the sun. I got to do the steam room. I got to really take care of my body in order to take care of my voice so I can put out the best product that I can possibly do. So, yeah, in that regard, looking back on older things, I definitely can see that I'm not even, 5 years ago, even I can see that I'm not the performer or the singer that I am now,
Was it natural with your singing voice to come out, or was it something that you realized you had, but then you had to develop the skill to strengthen it, or because it sounds like to me, at least from my perspective, when I listen to you sing, it sounds like
Mm-hmm.
you just pretty much just do it on the drop without at least the impression I get, without having to really warm up so much. But I'm curious about how that came for you, because actually met a few people, a handful of people that sing phenomenally just like that, and they don't really have to work on the vocals so much, and at least
Yeah.
like some other people do. But you kind of strike me as that person that does that where it comes naturally. But I'm actually curious about
Well,
how that
I'm
actually how natural
glad
it
that it
was.
comes across that way, because that's not the case at all.
Okay.
I've had to. I mean, I think the natural ability to sing has been with me for a long time, ever
Mm,
since probably when I realized I had a singing voice when I was a teenager, and I didn't start singing until I started playing guitar. I would sing in the car, or I would sing in the shower like everybody else. And I would think, oh, I'm okay. But then I really realized I could sing when I started playing guitar, and then I started singing. And then I started playing live shows, like when I was 19 years old, I started playing my first live shows. And around here, I mean, you're required to do really like 3-hour sets. So I found myself getting really exhausted vocally after the first set.
How long was the first set?
There's got to be something I can do. Well, I wouldn't lose my voice, but I just wouldn't have the range to really continue the last 2 sets like I wanted to continue.
Right.
And I was in a relationship with a girl that went to one of the colleges here, that her roommate was a vocal coach. And he was like, man, I can get you to a point where you can sing all night long. And so at that point I took him up on some training, and we didn't really do any singing style training. I mean, he did train me on singing songs, obviously, but the main focus was proper breathing, and knowing when to sing, with your diaphragm, or, using your chest, your throat, your head voice, or a combination of whatever. And I've gotten to be able to do those things kind of on command as I've gone. But it took me a while to get here, to where I am now with my voice. So I had to work at it. So I'm glad it seems like a natural thing, but it's taken a lot of work on my behalf to get to that point.
How long was the first show that you did when you performed live? Like, do you recall what the length of that was?
Oh, the first one I did, I mean, when I was a teenager, we were doing, just like hour opening sets for really popular local bands around Oklahoma, like Wakeland and Kurt Hill. And then we'd do some opening slots for some bigger Texas names that would come through, like Ian Moore, guys like that. And so, but when we got to doing our like the clubs would then book us for the whole night. And that's when I was like, because the hour was like, oh, I can do this, Okay. And then they were like, well, we want you to play from 9 to 1. And so at that point, I realized I didn't really have the stamina to go that long. So that's when I realized I need to work on it.
Do you still get nervous before you go on stage, even to this day?
There are occasions.
Okay. What would be the occasion that would come out for you to be nervous?
Like if I'm opening up for somebody that I really admire and I want to impress them, I get nervous before I go, but then that kind of adrenaline takes over once you get on stage.
Right.
So that kind of takes a steering wheel, and I go from there. The times I really get nervous are like, I was recently asked to sing at a funeral of someone I didn't know. And someone just reached out to me and said, hey, we really love your voice, and we'd love for you to sing at my friend's funeral. And I was obviously very honored to do so, but I found myself getting really nervous just because it's in the very intimate situations. Like if I'm in front of a large group, there are no nerves. But if I was in a living room and someone was like, hey, bring your guitar out and play some songs, and there were some people in there that I didn't know, I would find myself getting nervous for whatever reason. I don't know. It's just how I am.
What's the biggest hurdle you have to deal with right now when you are about to play, whether it be at a live setting or in preparation? Because I would imagine at certain points that, even though you've gone through a lot with the training and you've gone through a lot in the various shows you played at, various people you play at, requests and so on, is there still something that you are still having struggled to overcome, even up to this point where you realize that this is an area of your, whether it be the actual music that you're playing, anything related to that field that you feel like you still need to work on that you have yet to overcome, if that makes any sense?
Gosh, I'm not sure. I'd have to think on that question. I think the only thing that makes me uncomfortable at my shows is if someone were to come up and request something that I don't know. It's like, I'm not necessarily a request guy. I kind of know what I know, and that's about it. Every now and then I can pop something out that is kind of off the cuff. But other than that, I mean, There's nothing I can think of.
What's actually the most challenging part of, because I know you've obviously gotten better, but what's actually the challenging part with the amount of years you've gotten from playing live, playing music that you're good at, but it's still something that it's not a struggle for you to maintain, but something about how you would approach something before that maybe was like, for example, like a song like this, and in this case, like "Deliver Me," because you talked before on more than one occasion how that song was very personal to you and the history behind it, dealing with your grandfather. But I would think that when I hear you talk about, there are moments that you catch yourself that I've seen on more than one occasion where you have to like pause to collect yourself, considering how personal the song is for you. But I would think that to some degree that before you play that song or as you're playing that song, you still have that same moment where you have to kind of collect yourself in a situation like that. So that's kind of where my question is pertaining to, because I'm wondering if you have a moment like that where you, in this case, let's say Deliveries be an example, but, or maybe not to say that song, but something else of that sort where you have something, you have to mentally prepare for to make sure that when you do it, you do without any sort of like hiccups along the way. So I'm wondering if you have something like that would come to mind that you think you still have to deal with in that respect.
Well, I think that's a great example of one.
Okay.
And for that song requires a specific kind of headspace,
right,
for me, because the passing of my grandfather is still relatively fresh, even though it was just a few years ago.
Right.
And he was just a major, major influence in my life. He played a big hand in raising me and my brothers. And when I heard Randy Sanders, my guitar player and my best friend, he wrote the music to that song. And when I heard that music, it's like my grandpa was in the room with me,
Right.
it's like he was like had his hand on my shoulder or something. And those words came from that feeling. So when I play that song live, it is, I even just talking about it with you right now.
I could see it.
There's a presence or there's a feeling that comes over me, and I've got to get in that space. And I'm immediately taken back to all these feelings, that I had when I put those lyrics down on paper with my friend Damien Aranda. I've never written anything so personal. So that one takes a toll on me. And I feel like every time after we're done playing it live, it's like I just ran a marathon or something.
Interesting.
And I usually do it at the end of the night because after it, I'm honestly emotionally spent, because I'm revisiting all these things. And I think it takes us like 4.5 minutes to get through that one live. And I think I journey through my relationship with my grandfather during that 4.5 minutes, which is very special for me, but it's also very mentally exhausting. And so, and emotionally exhausting. Just because I think I go through my whole life experience with him up into the moment of his death, the moment of his passing, and I relive it all. And then when that song's done, it's just like, woo, something just came out of me, So it's heavy.
Do you ever feel like, because like, here's an example, and not to say that this song is similar to what the song that you're singing about your grandfather here, but like, the only time I've ever actually heard someone talk about a song that is heavily requested and that they'd never play it again. And I'm sure you're familiar with the band Korn, the heavy metal band. Yeah. So there's a song off that first record. It's called Daddy. And when you listen to the lyrics to that song, it's a very heavy subject matter. And, the song was never completed because they literally in the recording, he breaks down and cries, and the band's just trying to like make up for that space to kind of fill in the gaps, if you will. And that's actually one of the most heavily requested songs that a lot of people ask, play that song. But a lot of people, he has to tell everybody in the band members too, it's like, that's a song that takes so much out of him. You have to understand the type of music they play. They're moving around constantly. And by the time they get to this one song, he's spent. But it's one of those situations where I understand him in that situation. I'm not trying to make that comparison for you with him, but with John Davis, I meant. But what I'm curious about is that, do you ever feel like in this case with Deliver Me, if you feel like I'm not going to play this for a while because I've got enough materials for me to play other stuff. And then one day when I'm prepared to come and revisit the song, then I can approach it differently to either, I don't know, not saying they could have it sound better for yourself, but maybe in a way where you have time away from it and then you're prepared to revisit it again. And maybe your sentiments about how you approach a song would be different because, even when I hear you play the song up to, I don't know how many times I've heard it on different spots you played it here, but it's always consistent. But I always feel like there's a part of me that wonders if you feel like this, it's today going to be the last time I'll play this song because of how much it's taken out of me.
That's a great question. I haven't encountered a song like that yet that I just think to myself, I don't think I can play this one anymore. Okay. Except for like, there is a song, Purple Rain was kind of like around these parts, around the,
that was a good cover. I saw that one.
Yeah. I've been covering that one for so many years that it's become synonymous with me in a lot of different circles. So people will see me and they'll go, "Oh, Purple Rain." It's just one of those things.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
And I think that one at this point I don't play unless it's requested.
I see.
Just because I've done it for so long.
Right.
But Deliver Me, no, I can see. I don't see a point coming where I don't think I can play that song. Because like I said, even though it is emotionally draining, I feel like I get to feel the presence of my grandfather with me for those 4 minutes. It's very special. I get to be connected with him again.
I see. Okay.
When I play that song. So even though it can be draining, it's uplifting at the same time because I feel him with me. If that makes sense.
It does. So when you're, cause here's a question I wanted to ask you because listening to the song and even to the various other songs that you had played on your record, which I do like a lot, by the way, but there's actually a song that I want to point out here next, but after I get with this question here, because, I'm not sure if, how exactly your thought process is when it comes to writing music, but I'm not sure if you're the type of person that would write based off emotion or write based off something from an experience that you may have had that would help influence, the songwriting process or the writing the music or whatever the case may be. But when you're going through that creative process for yourself, are you do you consider yourself to be more emotional to whatever comes naturally for me? I'm going to use that to be the guiding force of the writing process, or I got to find something. Okay, this is a good idea. That's a good idea. And I'm going to use these ideas to formulate this beat or song or lyric that I want to write.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's more of the latter in the process, because I find that a lot of times when I sit to write, it's kind of the storytelling time for me.
Okay.
And a lot of times the story is fictional, but I can still relate to it in a way because I think, the best songs are written when they come from a personal space. So even the songs that they don't tell a story about my personal life, I can maybe take something that's happened to a friend of mine or something that maybe I even saw on TV in a story or something, or a story that just came to mind, guy, girl in X situation, what would I do? I think a lot of those songs come from a lot of hypotheticals on my end. And I still get emotionally tied to them because each song is like a little baby you've got, and you're when you're done with it, you're just like, all right, let me put this baby out and see what happens with it, see if it can change the world at all, and so in that regard, it's not necessarily personal experiences that influence my songs, but most of the time it's just storytelling for me. Yeah.
So I know that there are a few of the songs on your record. I'm trying to remember what the name of the song that you had written that was not written by you. I forgot who it was that wrote the song.
It's probably Damien Randa.
Yeah, I believe so. And
he wrote a handful of songs on there.
Okay, so the reason I'm pointing this out is because I'm curious about your perspective on someone else writing the music for you, more or less. I'm sure you have a lot of say in the matter too, and how the song will be composed together here. But
Yeah.
But you have someone that comes in and says, "Hey, I got a set of lyrics here for this song. This is the beat. We think it'd be great for the song. We think it'd be perfect for you to sing it, play it, and so on." But is it easier for you to be able to listen to someone else's lyrics and say, I can connect with it? Or do you have a process where you have to really find something, despite what you may like about it, to truly connect with it? Because I think for me, just hearing you talk about, in this case, let's say, for example, like Deliver Me, where it obviously has a very direct connection for, someone else came up with the beat, but you found the lyrics for the beat, and therefore you have that connection. But if someone else says, here are the lyrics, here's the beat, we think you're perfect for it. Do you have to find something that, or is it easy for you to say, I love the way it sounds. Yeah, let's play it. Or let me sift through it first and let me see what I can connect with. And then I'll get back to you, if that makes any sense.
Well, that's a great question. And I'll have to send you like the original demo versions of the songs that are on my record that weren't written by me, because they're very different.
Right.
What we did, I don't know, I can't remember the name of the show, but there's a show on NBC, I think it's NBC, where they sit around, and it's like Black Eyed Peas guys have been on there.
Oh, The Voice?
No, it's not The Voice. It's about songwriting. So
I know what you're talking about. I forgot the name of the show, but I know.
Anyhow, but the contestants bring a song, right?
Right.
And I think Her has been on there, and the Black Eyed Peas, will.i.am was on there, and it was like they were like, okay, I'm going on the show to write a song for will.i.am, or to bring a song that I have that I think would be suitable for him.
Oh, okay.
So what they did was they bring the song, they propose it, and then they had a couple of days to tailor make it to will.i.am. And that's basically what happened on my record with these songs that I didn't write. It was mainly Damien Aranda and his brother Gabe Aranda, and there were a couple other guys that were songwriters in some of those cases. But it was mainly the Aranda brothers, and they had these songs that they never really did anything with, and so like commercially, because their sound is a little heavier rock these days, and those songs just didn't fit their genre. So they brought these songs to me, and we all sat around, and it was Damien's idea to go, hey, let's not be just fine with the way the song is as it stands right now. Let's tailor make it to something that sounds something like a song that would just come out of you. And so, like with Superficial Girl, we changed how that song is. Not the lyrics, really. We changed some of the lyrics. Lord, You Cover My Soul is another one. There's a song called One on there. And these were demoed very differently than how I ended up on my record, just because we were kind of going for a little bit of a theme on how things should sound on the record as a whole. But really, they wanted it to be like, this doesn't sound like Aranda. This sounds like Adam Aguilar. So we got together and got in the room, and it was a production thing too. Like once we got things recorded, then things were rearranged in certain places. But it was kind of like how they do it on that show, where they say, okay, this is a great song. I think I could use it, but it's gotta sound a little more like maybe it came from me. And that's what we did with those. And that was really special for me.
Interesting. So so you mentioned a song that I actually was going to get into next year. And so having listened to the record, there's a certain momentum that the record has up until the part of the song One, which is what I wanted to ask you about. Here's the thing. When I first heard that song, not to say when I first heard the whole song, I didn't get it. It's not that. But when I first heard, I'm going to say maybe the first 20, 30 seconds, if that, it took me a while to get used to it, because the other songs surrounding that track were different, right? They had the same consistency. This is the one that stuck out in that regard. But once I actually finished listening to the song, I go back and played it again. And it's funny because that's actually one of my favorite songs that I've heard on that record. But the reason why I think it appealed to me was because for some reason, it reminded me of another song that I've heard before that kind of had a similar atmosphere to it that One has. and I was trying to figure out what this song was. So I literally went, I think I might have gone on YouTube where I put in one and then Adam Aguilar, and just because, when you do a search, it'll populate other
Yeah.
stuff that's similar like that. And I couldn't find the song because I knew what it was, because I hadn't heard it. Actually, I've heard it recently, but I forgot who the artist was off the top of my head. Then I found the song. It was "In the House of Stone and Light" by Matthew Page. I'm not sure if you heard of that song before.
Okay, I don't know that one.
Okay. So it's not similar in that respect, but it had a similar, the song one and "In the House of Stone and Light" are not similar as being like the same type of music, but it had a similar atmosphere to it that reminded me so much about a time when I was a kid that my mom had listened to that song, and it brought up a certain feeling that I had. And that's what that song brought out of me when I was listening to the track. And I remember thinking, like, there's a feeling that I remember getting from this song that I haven't felt in quite some time. And that was a time when I was a child, when my mom had listened to that song, because she really loved that song. She was talking about the importance of it. And I didn't know the whole story behind the whole song, but she really liked the song a great deal. For some reason, that track reminded me a lot of that moment in my time, and in that time with my conversation with my mother. So the reason I'm bringing this up about this song is because I'm wondering if there was any kind of hesitation about the way that the track was put together that sounded completely different from all the other tracks in that record, where you have a consistency of the funk and soul aspect to it here, but then all of a sudden you have a very melodic, more atmospheric song that kind of changes the momentum for it, but it's consistent with what you're going for here. So I'm curious about how you guys were looking at that song, because I'm not sure if you guys were for with that approach, or if you tried one thing, didn't work out, and then by chance may have worked out, and trying that track to play out the way it did in the final cut, if you will.
No, we actually knew that one would stick out differently than the others, and I liked that idea, actually, of us having a song just kind of, especially because of the message of the song,
right?
And especially because of obviously the times that we live in. We thought it was really important, even if just one person heard it and they were like, you know what, that message is something that really needs to be heard. That was the goal of that song, is we wanted to just be something that you heard and we're like, oh, wait a minute, this is different, and something that caught your attention, in that regard.
When you're putting on music together, are you one of those musicians that has a let me see, what's the best way I can ask here? If you write something, or if someone's writing something for you, is there a theme that you're trying to go for in terms of, like, okay, so in this case, let's talk about the song one, where there's a message behind the music that you feel is important to tell, but I'm wondering if that's kind of your intention of wanting to write the music for those reasons, or in this case, like in this for Delivery, where it was more of a natural progression, where it came out pretty organically. But I'm not sure if you have I wouldn't say an agenda, but more or less of a approach to how you want to go about and what you want to say, how you want to say it with the music you're putting together. Because if it's one of those situations where what's the best thing to talk about right now, and how can we write that into a song, I'm curious to see what your approach in that respect is like for yourself.
Yeah, well, like, for example, to go back to one, the whole reason I put that song on the record is because I appreciate the message, and I wanted to spread that message,
right?
That we are one, and it's time, and this is a time to come together and not be divided. So, what's funny about that song is when your last question, when you were talking about it reminds me of somebody, and you couldn't really put your finger on it.
Yeah.
Well, Damien, along with a couple of other songwriters, had written that song specifically for Seal. The artist Seal.
I know he is. Yeah, of course.
And that song was pitched to Seal. That song's been on a journey, man, because it was written, like, I don't know, maybe I want to say it was written in the late 2000s, like 2008 or something like that. And that's when it was pitched to Seal. And Seal was in the process of making a record, and it made it to his producers, and it made it to Seal, and it was about that close to going on whatever record he was making at that time, and it didn't. So, but they wrote it in mind with Seal in mind. So when I hear that song, it sounds like it could have been a Seal song.
Interesting. I never thought of that.
Yeah. So next time you listen to it, think Seal, and I bet that'll make some sense for you too.
I think you're probably 100% right.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So when you're when you're done with the writing process and putting everything together here, is there still a part of you that's satisfied or that's not satisfied with the fact that I'm sure you're very proud of what you've done. Like, this is really good. I love the way it sounds. Everything is put together very well. But is there still part of you that wonders, but you know what? I know for a fact we could have done this. It could have done that. We could expand on this, because I'm curious about, because you talked about being self-critical about how you look at certain things for yourself. But I'm wondering if after you finished this, in this case for the last record you did, that you feel like something could have been done more to just make it that much better. But I love what came out of it, because I'm wondering if you still have a little of that unsatisfaction to some degree with whatever it is you do.
Yeah, I would say that as far as that record's concerned, or anything, and really anything I put out, because I've had other bands that there's another band called 2 a.m. that I was in, that we put some material out in, and a band that I had when I was really young called Sabrosa, and these were all guys that I grew up with, and we were all best friends in school, and my brother was in it too, my brother Albert. And we formed this band, and we wrote a lot of songs. We put out 3 different records, and we're actually putting together a reunion for that band right now.
Oh, interesting.
Sidebar. But yeah, back to this most recent one. I think it goes along with everything else that I've done. Well, this recent my self-titled debut, I am so proud of the way it is musically, like all the instrumentation. Mm-hmm. I've surrounded myself with like the top tier players, and
I agree.
I'm so lucky to have everyone that plays with me live and plays on this record. And, my partner in crime, Randy Sanders, who co-wrote all the songs and spearheaded the whole, really the record has my name on it, but all the original stuff that we have on there, that's our stuff. He led the musical charge on it. So in that regard, I'm so proud of all the things that they've done on it. I think the only thing that I'm ever critical of when I listen to it is my voice.
Okay.
Because I will hear certain things and go, oh man, I wish I would have gone for this note, or I wish I could hear my voice cracking in certain parts where maybe it sounds great there, but it still bothers me, for whatever reason. Right. I'm just super analytical and critical of my singing. But on the flip side of that coin, Damian Aranda, who was my producer and also the songwriter on a lot of those songs, he pushed me so hard beyond my limits, or beyond what I thought were my limits as a vocalist, and made me realize that I was capable of doing so much more than what I kind of allowed myself to do. So because of that, he kind of put me in this new headspace of where I'm like, okay, well, I used to be able to sing great, but he turned me into an even better singer. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of taken that, and even since I've made the record, I've gotten to a place where I feel like I'm an even better vocalist. And so when I listen back, sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I could have had another shot at that song, because with the way my voice is right now, I could have really knocked that one out of the park. There's a song called "I Don't Want to Go Back."
Yeah, I've heard that song. Yeah,
and that was that song brought me to tears, just because of how difficult it was to record that song vocally. Okay. It's you wouldn't think it is, mm-hmm. but it is super challenging. Sure. There's not a lot of room to breathe. There's a lot of notes that kind of hang out there, and it was very out of my wheelhouse when I went to record it, and it was the first song that we did vocals on. So to put it in perspective, I mean, it took us about a year to make the record. Okay. And by the end, by the time the last song came, I'm trying to think. I think the last one we did was one. Anyhow, I Don't Want to Go Back was the first one. And right out the gates, I was just like, oh man. I was like, maybe I'm not that good, because I felt like I was failing at recording the vocals for that song. Every take sounded like garbage to me. And Damien got me coached up, and he was like, try this here, try that there. And finally we ended up with a product that I was happy with. But having said that, I really wish I could go back and have another shot at it, because I think I would do an even better job in the studio on that one now at this point.
What outside of let's say, apart from your family, maybe some other musicians that obviously have helped influence your musicianship here, but what's some other form of inspiration that you take from that really has been a major influence for yourself when it comes to, let's say, songwriting, performing, compositing the music together? What's another source of inspiration that you get that helps with that here, that maybe some people may not realize had a major impact on you to some degree?
Like artistic inspiration?
It could be any artistic. It could be, like, for example, like films, but I mean anything outside of your family and other musicians that help influence you, but something outside of that circle, if you will, that you realize that if it wasn't for this, I don't know if I would have been able to done this, because having seen this or experienced that, this helped formulate my approach with X, Y, and Z with the music.
Yeah. Man, I would say comedy.
Really?
Comedy. Yeah.
Really? That's interesting.
Just because I think comedians are some of the smartest people on the planet.
I agree. Yeah.
Because they take a look at things in ways that I think we all look at, but they're able to put their thoughts into statements that make us go, oh, wow. And we can laugh at that, right? But you can also, even though you're laughing at it, you're like, especially when it comes to people like Dave Chappelle or, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Robin Williams, and even a lot of my favorite podcasters like Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura, Bobby Lee, Chris D'Elia, Andrew Centino. The list goes on and on for me. I'm a huge stand-up comedy fan, but those guys are all really inspiring to me because they have taught me new ways to think about certain circumstances. So I think in a way that translates to me writing, because I think everything you take in artistically is just all about really kind of unlocking another compartment of your brain, and evolving the way that you think about things, evolving the way your approach to certain circumstances. And so, as funny as it may sound, comedy has been that for me,
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually a really unique perspective there. I never thought I would ever hear that kind of answer before. Well, so then for you, what's actually one of the worst things about the whole music process? And I'm not talking about the business side. I'm talking about like more of like a personal approach that you have, that maybe you may have liked it, but don't like it as much, or maybe still hated it, but don't hate it as much. But I'm wondering if there's something that you still have to do to this day that you don't look forward to doing in order for you to prepare for whatever endeavors you're following through in the music arena, if you will.
That's a tough one. I don't know that and this is honestly speaking, I don't know that there is anything that I dread or dislike about the process. If there is anything, it's that, I probably play at least 200, 225 shows a year. And there's only 365 days in a year, right? So that can get pretty taxing. And there are times that I'm tired, and especially because music's not the only thing I do. I mean, I wish it was. I'm also a realtor. I'm also a restaurant bar owner. I'm a booking agent for a lot of the bands that play in Oklahoma just by proxy. I've just helped people book their shows just because I've got the ins with the venues. So I have my hands in a lot of different things, and sometimes I'm just
overwhelmed.
And I'm overwhelmed, and I feel like there's a lot expected of me at times, but I still have to deliver. And there are times where I'm like, I'll be home from work and get ready to play a show that night, I'll just be on the couch and be like, man, I just really don't feel like doing it today. Like, I don't feel like going. And that's probably, if there's anything I dislike, I dislike that feeling. But then I'll get there and I'll get to doing it, and I get the adrenaline injection. I get the positive feedback from the people that have come to see me and show me love.
Right.
And at that point, that goes away. But if there's anything that I wish I didn't have to deal with, it's that feeling, that kind of in between feeling, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
So have you ever had a show, or I'm sure you still go through it now, but where you're playing and you realize, I just don't want to do this right now. Like, I want to never. Okay. Interesting.
No, I can honestly say I love it that much that once I'm in the setting and once I'm doing it, there's no place I'd rather be.
Interesting.
There's no place I'd rather be, aside from being with my wife and my kids.
Right.
There's no place I'd rather be than doing that deal. And I get to have my son with me. He's been playing. He's become a great guitar player, and he's still learning. And I'm doing my best to be a dad and help foster that deal and help him develop. And so he's been playing a lot of shows with me, and so that's been just an incredible feeling on its own. Just having your child take part in something that is so near and dear to you, and see that they have the same love and passion for that as you do, is just a phenomenal, special feeling.
So speaking about your son, that having the same interest as yourself, what's something that because you talked to Adam about this before in the past, where he had asked you what some things you would have told yourself to prepare for in the future that you would have been very useful for you. And I forgot exactly the exact word as you used, but it was something along the lines about preparing for.
Yeah,
but
I think I was kind of cheeky in my answer on that one, because I said something to the effect that I wouldn't have told myself how hard it would be, or how long I would spend doing this and not have made it.
Well, but that's my question.
My term in making it now is my view of making it is much different now than it was then.
But that's my question to you, though, because I understood with what you meant, and I actually picked up on the fact that what people's perspective on making it is not necessarily what people perceive it to be, where you're playing on stage. That part I get, but in this case for your son, because your son is, I'm not sure if he's pursuing, but he's just pursuing the playing of guitar. I'm not sure if he's singing as well too. But I'm wondering if you are showing him the things that, okay, so if you're going to be doing this here, one, why are you doing it? And two, if you're going to be doing it for these reasons, what's your end game at the end of the day? Because I'm curious about what it is you're going to be advising him, but really more or less trying to see what his headspace is at that moment for you to see where he's at, what his actual goal in mind is here, or better yet, if he has no idea what it is, but just enjoys that particular moment that he's playing or singing, that maybe you have a different perspective about, well, I knew at this age, if someone had talked to me about this here, I know this time I'm not going to say these things because it wouldn't be beneficial for them. Instead, I'm going to try it like this and figure out how I'm going to, and let him figure out the rest. So I'm curious to see what your perspective in that respect with your son is like.
I think the thing that I would tell him to do differently is to go all in. I never allowed myself to really just put all your cards on all the chips on the table and go all in and make music something that you just commit yourself to. I just when I was coming up, I was still, and to this day, like I said, I'm a realtor. I've owned different businesses, and I've always, I wouldn't say music has always been a hobby, because it's been more than a hobby. I mean, I've been able to be a music professional at the same time. It's part of how I make my living. It's part of how I identify my life. But if there's anything I would like him to do differently, I'd like him to find a spot where he can just say, you know what, I'm going for it. No apologies. I'm just going to, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be. And I'm going to focus on that. I'm not going to focus on anything else. Because I think maybe if I would have been able to do that, like a lot of the people that I know that have been successful, then maybe my story as a musician would be a little bit different.
Right.
I mean, who knows? Maybe it wouldn't. But I will always have the thought of what if I was able to just say, you know what, I'm just going to go and this is all I'm going to do. And I've never been able to get myself to a point where I can do that. So if there are any regrets as a musician, I would say it's that. I've always had the mindset of, well, I've got to do something else too, right? I got to be able to pay the bills. I got a family to take care of. I got all, this, that, and the other. I can't just do that with music. I think that's what I think I told myself that for too long.
So you set the boundaries for yourself before.
I did. I did. And making my latest record really came to me at a point in my life where I was like, you know what? I am going to go. I'm going to really make the record I've always wanted to make. No apologies. I'm going to be unapologetically me. It's going to be exactly the way I want this thing to be. No compromises. And that's the first time in my life that I've ever really done that with anything, is doing that way. And then, my plan was to really tour hard with it. And lo and behold, we get COVID and touring shuts down. So I'm still in the process of working that out, and people are starting to get back on the road again and do the deal. And so I am gonna do a tour to support the record, even though it's about a year and a half behind. I'm gonna get that done.
Better late than never, right?
Yeah, better late than never. Exactly. Yeah.
Is there something about yourself that you realize has changed about how you look at yourself as a person when it comes to how you, because you kind of touched upon before about how you had set the boundaries about this isn't a, more or less kind of how I understand it, that you didn't feel like this dream of you pursuing music on, head on on a full-time basis as being feasible for you. You kind of limited yourself about, well, I got to think about these things. So you put this to the side, but that you still held on to that. And, I'm wondering, because you mentioned before about how you regretted how you could have gone the distance, but instead you just held yourself back. And it sounds like maybe with only you that held yourself back. There's no other outside factors that prevented you. Yeah. So, but having gone through that, do you feel like a lot has changed about how you look at yourself in that respect, where maybe you don't have the regrets as in saying that, I wish I could have done it. I mean, maybe you wish you could have done it, but you've had the experience where I had a taste of a little bit of everything that I want to do, maybe in a local level, if you will, but I've had that experience. So I know that, that it quenched my thirst in those respective areas. But so I'm wondering about how you look at yourself now, because you've had those experiences where maybe you look and reflect on the things that the things you really wanted and things you thought you wanted, and you were able to filter it out throughout the years, where you realize, okay, now I know what my priorities are apart from family, but my own self priorities about what I really want to do when it comes to my music, because I've had these levels of variations of successes, not success in terms of maybe monetary, but more success of like getting more gigs and having people showing interest in it, being able to do a record and being able to do various different shows, that those levels of success you've experienced maybe have been more meaningful now, whereas before you probably wouldn't have taken them as, you probably would have not been as grateful, if that makes any sense. So I'm not sure, I'm hoping that's a fair question to ask you.
Yeah, no, it is a fair question. I think there's like an alternate universe version of me that maybe did that, that like did really committed and maybe wasn't there for my family every day like I am, like I am, So in that regard, it's not necessarily a regret, because I'm glad that I wasn't one of those guys that was on the road constantly and missed my kids growing up, and I was able to be here and be that father figure and be the husband and do all those things. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily like, man, I wish I could have done it, but at the same time, I don't think it's too late to do it. That's why I said, when I used to be in the oil and gas business, and when prices fell, that's when I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna have some time on my hands. So let's get this record done that I've always wanted to do. And it's funny, man, the journey that life takes you on, because you really just don't know what's going to happen until it slaps you in the face sometimes. So now that I'm in a spot where I do have this record out that I'm really proud of. I was able to, have this relationship with my kids that I have, and with my wife, and have my son play in the group with me and do the deal. It's all very fulfilling.
What's do you think you're because you honestly strike me as a person who's very much a team player, but there's a part of me that believes that you know what you want and you know how you want it done. So is there a part of that creative process for yourself where you're not willing to budge, and because you were not willing to budge, you have been successful as a result of maintaining those those, I guess, set of values or set of principles, if you will?
Sure. I'm a Virgo. I think that's the way that's the way it goes for a lot of us, I'm very accommodating to people, and I pride myself on doing my best to be kind to my brothers and sisters, and that's not just my family, that's everyone around me, and treating people the way that I want to be treated. But at the same time, there are things that I very much like to do my way. And I think for a lot of time, I compromised that in my music. And I really got myself to a point where I was like, you know what, I'm done compromising that. I'm gonna do this my way. And I've done that in business too. But I've also been like, that's not to say that I'm the type of guy that's not going to take any suggestions too, because I'm all about constructive criticism of the things that I'm doing. And while I say there are things that I do like done my way, I'm also a very village kind of person, So if someone suggests something that I'm not afraid to say, hey, that's a much better idea than I had. Let's do it that way. So in that regard, I am a team player. You're right about that. But I do like things my way, but I'm not so bullheaded that I'm just going to be like, I'm going to forego a better way to do things just because it wasn't my idea. If that makes sense.
I do. I understand what you mean. Is there actually, because now that you mentioned that here, I'm actually curious about, is there something that you have done in the past where you realize that the way that I dealt with something was flat wrong? And I'm not talking about you did something wrong. I'm not referring to that. I'm actually referring to more about how you look at how you approach something a certain way that, and people say, maybe you should try this instead. And you realize, no, we're going to do it like this because I know it works. It may have worked before. And then as the years have gone by, you realize, what? That was a terrible idea. And now that I've experienced it, therefore, I'm never going to do that mistake again and listen to other suggestions. So I'm kind of hoping that's kind of a fair question to ask, because there's not.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure I'm sure there's plenty of things that can be listed out in that regard.
Okay.
No doubt. I'm old enough to have made my fair share of mistakes, and I can look back on those with things that I definitely would have done differently. For sure.
So let me ask you about something about your taste in music, because I'm actually really curious about, because you do a variety of covers, and I got to think there's a part of you that when you listen to a song and you're covering it, you realize, I wish I wrote this song. This song is so good. If there's one song or an album that I listened to that I realized, if there's one I could have written, it would have been this. Is there something that comes to mind about that comes to you that says that makes you feel that this song or this record would be a record or song that I would have loved to have written for myself?
Yeah. I've been doing. I'm a huge Prince fan, and I've been doing the Beautiful Ones at my shows, and I'm like, gosh, I've always loved that song, but especially since I've been playing it. And I don't know if you've noticed in some of the videos that you may have watched, that a lot of the songs that I cover kind of take on a just the kind of way I do it. You know, they're never true to the original version.
Yeah.
That you can still see where I got there, but it just kind of naturally evolves into something that is kind of my own. In every cover song that I do. And The Beautiful Ones is one of those songs, and I'm really proud of the version that I do with the band. And if there's a song I wish I would have wrote, it's that one for sure.
Is there a song that you have played that you realize, I think I like what I did better than the original?
No. Okay. No, I would never bring myself to say that.
Okay.
No. Absolutely not.
But how about this? How about, is there a song that you've played and you realize maybe it wasn't as good as I thought it was now that I've actually played it?
Oh yeah, there's been plenty of songs.
Okay.
I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there's been plenty of songs where, you know, we have the band text message thread, and I'm like, it's always me that's like, hey guys, listen down to this song, and I want to try it on Friday night. And so we'll do that, and sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we play it and look at each other and go, well, I guess that's the last time we do that one. Right? Yeah, but there's been plenty of those instances.
So for yourself, how do you actually deal with critiques? Because you talk about you welcome constructive criticism. And I think any person that is pretty much open to that. But when you first started playing music, because again, you know, you listen to because you mentioned before that your father was one of those guys that, you know, if you look at him and say, he doesn't seem to be happy about it, it kind of got to you. But then once he started noticing your singing abilities, and you realized that once he noticed that I was good,
mm-hmm.
I knew I had something. But
mm-hmm.
outside of your father, that you've gotten that confirmation of your abilities here. But when you have other people that criticize you, I'm not sure how you would have dealt with them back then and how you deal with it now. If the critiques that you dealt with then are still consistent now when it comes to how people listen to your critique about maybe the way you sing, the way you play the songs, whatever the case may be. I'm curious to see how you handle that for yourself, because I would imagine you still deal with that to some degree in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, how often? And if so, how do you deal with it if it happens on a consistent basis?
No, I don't deal with that very often these days. But yes, there was a time when I was younger, like I'm talking like my early 20s, and my brother Albert was in the band with me, and we'd have a heckler on, near the front of the stage, or giving us a thumbs down or saying, boo, you guys suck. And there were a couple times where we pretty much came to physical blows with those guys. So I handle criticism like that much different now in my older and wiser age. But I usually, we don't have to typically deal with a lot of criticism. There'll be some people that come to see us play. Oklahoma's a tough market.
Okay.
When it comes to trying to inject original music. I'd say Oklahoma City in particular. Tulsa is a much friendlier market. Oklahoma City's getting there. I'm very proud of how far the city has come, but we still got a ways to go when it comes to respecting original content that musical artists bring, because there's still a lot of those people that just still want to hear Freebird, and you got the Freebird, play Freebird. Those guys that are shouting out from the crowd, and when you try to play your own stuff, it kind of just doesn't. People just don't really get it, especially when they're not expecting it. If they're just at a bar and they just want to hear, the typical covers. So in those cases, I think it's difficult when you have people that are like, enough of that original material. Let's hear something I know. Or my favorite thing people say is, hey, play something I can dance to. And it's like, well, it's got a beat, and you can dance to it. I promise you. You just don't know the songs, so you don't want to. So those are the ones that I wouldn't say there's like too much negative criticism that I get these days. And I can see back when I was younger, like I wasn't. I've watched videos of myself in those times, and there was times we sucked. So I'm sure someone coming up to us going "boo" was not necessarily unwarranted. So
you mentioned something that I just remembered seeing. Actually, was last week. It was a cover you guys had done for. What was it? Because I saw only one. Oh, it was a Michael Jackson song you guys did. Bad, I think it was, if I remember correctly.
Really?
Yeah, it was because there was
I'm
you had
sorry.
another singer on stage too who was actually doing
Oh, it
Michael
was
Jackson.
Billie Jean.
Billie Jean, that's what it was. Thank you.
That was so. That's my friend Brennan Hunt,
Yeah,
who he's been on like Broadway and
he had a
TV
cast
show
on his
now.
leg too, if I
What's
recall
that?
correctly. Didn't he have a
Yeah,
cast on
yeah,
his leg?
yeah.
Okay.
He was on. Are you familiar with the musical Rent?
Yes, yes.
So he was the lead in the Fox Live production of Rent that just aired like during COVID.
Oh, I don't think I saw that one. No, but I know
Well,
what you're talking about,
anyhow,
though.
so he during set change he fell down a flight of stairs and broke his ankle on rehearsal night before they were going to do the live show the next day. And so that's if you ever watch it, that's why he had to do. They used a lot of the rehearsal footage for that very reason, but they used some footage of him in a wheelchair at the very end of the show with a live audience. So, but yeah, he was up there. We're both huge Michael Jackson fans, so we did. Yeah,
I could
we
tell.
did.
Yeah, because I saw that, and it was. I honestly didn't. I didn't expect it, and I laughed out loud, not because
Yeah,
I was making fun of it. It's just that because I'm listening to the different covers you do, and then I remember I saw that, and I was like, oh, this would be interesting. And I honestly thought you're going to be more like melodic and find a tempo that would fit with your style of singing and whatnot. And it was exactly what someone would do.
So that band. So I don't know if if you've done dug deep enough to find out I'm in a band that's called the Weekend All Stars. That is a party band. So we do a party, corporate events band that's called the Weekend All Stars, and we do cover songs that are pretty true to form. So like everything is pretty much like it is on the record. So that was that band.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it was.
It's basically we put that band together so we'd have a wedding band. I saw all these bands making a lot of money at weddings and corporate events, and I was like, I want to slice that pie.
Well, it was fun though to watch, but it was really funny because your friend had the cast on his foot, and I was like, this just looks so quirky, which I appreciate because it was just I didn't expect it, but it was funny. But
yeah,
okay. Well, so here's what I'm actually curious about with you in regards to with music now and how things are looking in the Oklahoma scene, because honestly, I'm not really familiar at all with the music scene in Oklahoma, apart from, what I've seen from Play It Loud. And even to some degree, I think Adam Hampton was telling me that he was just out of the loop with what was going on in the local scene. If it wasn't for Jason or Chad kind of chiming in and say, hey, you should, these are the guys we're going to be talked to on the show. Look at these songs or look at look at whatever it is to prepare for your conversation with them, because there's gonna be a lot that you need to take away from. It's funny because when talking about, when I told you before in the beginning that I came across you as a musician from the episode that you were in, and I think Adam had told me that he didn't even know who you were prior to speaking with you, and then as a result of the show, you guys had became friends after that.
Oh yeah.
So I'm actually curious about how, because I'm curious from Adam Hampton's perspective, where he wasn't really familiar with the local scene in that respect, whereas Chad and Jason are very much invested, and even to some degree I would say Kenny too. I think Kevy's very much invested, I meant to say, but having with the local scene, are you guys flourishing in that respect where a lot of people know the local artists, or is it kind of one of those things where there's a household name in the area and only a handful of people are able to keep up with that with their reputation, where it's harder for some other people more or less to break in the local scene, if you will?
I would say it's probably harder for younger people now to break into it, but the people that have established themselves are pretty well known in the community.
Okay. So
like a lot of my friends, like there's a guy named Derek Harris that's really popular. There's a band called Born in November. Shane Henry and Maggie McClure have a band called the Imaginaries, and Shane has a name on his own. They were also on the show a couple seasons ago.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
They're good. They're great friends of mine. and there's some younger guys that are coming up, but the venues, in order to put the band in the venues, you know, I know that side of the business pretty well because I'm involved in helping them book those shows. And a lot of times you just can't book a band unless they already have a following. Well, how do you get a following unless you play places? You know what I mean? So it's kind of a catch-22.
Right.
So I know a big way I got my start was I hitched a ride with, you know, a lot of the local guys that were having really big attendance at their shows. So I would make it a point to try to open for those guys and just get in front of their audiences. And then people would know me. And then all of a sudden, well, people were coming to see me. And so that obviously made the bar owners really happy. So they kept booking me again. But yeah, I would say, no, we have our crowd here in Oklahoma City has gotten so much more cultured than it has. It's been like ever since we got the Oklahoma City Thunder, and we've seen a kind of a boom in, you know, food and entertainment and just like different places to go around town. There's been a big increase in just the way people go out and do things. We're not just going to like chain restaurants anymore. You got people with really locally owned establishments, and those places are also helping to expose their audience to local artists. And so that's kind of a yin and yang, you know, just got to kind of goes hand in hand. But we've come a long way as a community in that regard.
What's the more popular music right now in the local scene in terms of music when it comes to booking musicians or singers out there? Because so for example, like I'm originally from Northern Virginia, and growing up in the DC area, a lot of punk music, a lot of heavy metal music was really, really popular. Very rarely did I ever recall like a band, let's say such as yourself, would ever headline a spot. And if they did, I mean, they had to be, you know, they had to have a letter from God to say, let this guy play, and then they would be able to book a show there. But a lot of times it would be a lot of local up and coming punk bands that would get these local spots, and then it kind of graduate from there. But in Oklahoma, I'm not sure, because watching Play It Loud, it's pretty consistent where in terms of like soul music, country music, rockabilly, whatever the case may be. But I've never actually seen the guys book in a metal band or a punk band in the Oklahoma scene. And I'm not sure if it's because there's not a lot of it out there, at least in the area. So I'm curious to see
there's some here, but it's just there's not a big audience for it. Oklahoma has kind of taken on red dirt music is really big here. Red dirt country music is huge in Oklahoma.
Okay.
I'd say that's probably the number one genre that people like to see when they go out around here.
Okay.
Or when they go to a concert, you know, at a smaller venue. Next to that is Texas blues. Texas style blues has just bled over in Oklahoma, and that's just what people like. You know, when we have a lot of those players, you know, I've already said Shane Henry, Siobhan Tiger is another one of those, Mike Sadawake. There are some Tulsa players that are just out of this world too. So like that genre is a favorite among people that like to go to bars and hang out. So if you're playing some solid blues, soul music, I mean, the people perk up and they listen here.
Okay. Do you feel like the music scene in time for Oklahoma City, or in Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma in general, would actually evolve into opening up to more places for bands like, you know, so in this case, let's say a metal band or punk band, to be able to try them out, be willing to take a shot at them to do so? Because you mentioned before about how the style of music that's more popular over there, but do you think in time that could change, or do you still see a long way before it gets?
No. I mean, I think it definitely can change, and those exist now. I'm just not in that world.
Okay.
You know, I'm not as familiar with what goes on in that metal and punk world, but I know that they exist around here. Okay. For sure. Yeah.
Is that style of music you also personally like yourself too, or is that you lean more towards more?
There are things that I wouldn't say I'm a metal or punk fan, but like I'm a rock fan for sure. Have you heard of a band called Big Wreck? They had a big song in the '90s called "That Song." I love that song, and it's that band's one of my favorite bands, and they're pretty. I mean, they're a heavy band, you know. So yeah, I cross genres a lot, but I'll still stay around that blues rock soul. I'm a big R&B fan. I'm a huge R&B fan. I love D'Angelo. Or a lot of neo soul acts. I'm huge into like the Roots, and I also like a lot of. I mean, I'm a big hip hop music fan. I love a lot of rap. I've loved rap music since I was a kid. So I'm a '90s rap kid, man.
Yeah, same here. I'm the same way too.
And that doesn't leave you. So yeah,
I agree with you too.
Yeah.
Well, so what's actually for you then the heaviest music that you like? I mean, you mentioned before about Big Wreck, but I'm talking about like I'm not gonna say Metallica, but what's a band that you would never consider listening to, but you heard a song, but you know what, I actually like this, therefore I'll stick with checking out the music from time to time. That would be more or less out of your lane, if you will.
Oh man, things that are out of my lane. I mean, Metallica is one of them.
Right,
I mean,
but I think it's more common when most people tend to.
I listened to a lot of Metallica in high school, and Megadeth and bands like that. I was a huge Kiss fan in high school. Huge Kiss fan. Man, when I think of rock music like that hits hard, I still go back to classics like Led Zeppelin. I'm a huge Aerosmith fan, and I know those aren't necessarily current guys, but when it comes to like heavier rock stuff, that's the stuff I kind of get into. Yeah.
What's a artist out there for you right now that you realize that sticks out as being the more or less that kind of changed the landscape of music? And it can be in any genre, or maybe the whole industry in general, where you realize this is never going to be the same again now that this person has come out or this group has come out. They've changed everything. And I know it happens quite often, but very rarely you have a group like that will come out and everyone knows who they are, and therefore that style of music they play is going to be is the standard now, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think guys like man, I love Bruno Mars. I've been huge.
He's a good one. Yeah,
and that Silk Sonic project, but I love Anderson .Paak too. Big fan of his. But I think if there's anyone that's changed the way music is right now, I mean, I'm actually a big Harry Styles fan too. Like, I think he's doing some freaking awesome things.
Yeah,
like his latest record's badass. But it's guys like that, I think, that are, Justin Timberlake's one. I think that has changed pop music. As far as like
100%. Yeah,
I agree. So those things I really enjoy. John Mayer, I think, has. I don't think he's changed music. I think he's done a lot to influence younger generations. So, like my son, for example,
interesting.
My son's 19 years old, and he listens to a lot of these blues players because his first exposure to that kind of music was John Mayer. So my wife's trying to get my attention.
No worries. You need to enter real quick.
No.
Okay.
So yeah, no, I think John Mayer is one of those simply because he has introduced that blues rock thing to a whole group of younger kids that I see all these young kids post videos on like TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. And they're all playing like Stevie Ray Vaughan style licks. And it's just like, whoa, but they all get that because John Mayer kind of brought that back to the forefront for the younger generation. And I can speak from experience because I know that's where my kid got it. And so because of that, he listens to people like Marcus King and Tedeschi Trucks and Gary Clark Jr. and all the younger, like the newer blues rock guys, because I think John put that kind of guitar playing in front of a new generation, and they kind of took it and ran with it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's an interesting point of view. Is there someone that you? I don't know if it's a fair question to ask because I don't want to put you in a spot like that, but I guess I'm going to ask it anyways.
Ask it.
Is there somebody or a group or something that you've listened to that you realize this is not good at all? And when I ask the question, I'm not asking in a sense of for you to bash it. It's more in a sense where like it's popular, but you don't see it being. You don't understand why it's popular.
Man, I think the only thing that I don't really get is, and I'm gonna sound super old right now. I don't really get like the trap rap music. It all sounds the same to me.
Oh, you're talking about like the mumble stuff? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, like,
that's I actually thought you were gonna say that.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm the same way
Because
too.
we come from a place where, man, we had Dre and Snoop and Pac and like, Nas and all that, and guys like that, and you're just like, man, it just, all these guys are just putting something out that it sounds like just one person's doing it. Yeah. I think one of the guys that's not like Kendrick Lamar, I think is brilliant.
Oh yeah, he's great. Yeah.
In fact, I think he's playing in Oklahoma City tonight. Tickets for that show are outrageous. But there's a lot of like the new generation of rap artists that, man, I just can't get into because it all just sounds the same to me.
Yeah, I'm
like
the same
I said,
way.
That's gonna make me sound really old.
Well, my son, he showed me because my son is 15, and he was showing me. I can't remember half the artist's name. He just throws me all these names out there, and I'm like, I don't know who these guys are.
And all the names are the same.
Yeah,
like what I mean. It's wild.
I'm the same way too. So he was trying to get me to, I forgot. I honestly don't remember the name of the song, but I forgot where it came from. But it was something to some movie, if I recall correct. I honestly don't remember the details, but it just sounded so boring. And I remember asking, "Is this what's popular right now?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Damn, I'm that guy now where I have no idea what's going on."
Though, every generation has done that.
Yeah,
it's so funny because I can remember listening to Nirvana and my dad going, "What is that?"
Man, that was gold.
Yeah, but still, it was stuff like that when we listened to it, it was just like the older guys didn't get it. Like I still am a huge Weezer fan. I love Weezer.
Oh, I love Weezer too.
And when the Blue album came out, and I played that, I remember older people around me going, "Man, this sucks." But it's like that, but that's legendary now. So chances are I'm 100% wrong about what I just said about the new class of rap music, because it's probably all that stuff's gonna end up being classics too. It's just we don't get it.
It's funny because I'm listening to you talk about how, because I agree with you too about some of the things that I don't find very good, at least for me personally. But I'm actually wondering how you look at the industry now for yourself, be it the local scene and in more the mainstream scene, if you will. Where I'm wondering, since while you were growing up and you had intentions at certain points to more or less make it in the industry. But seeing how things have changed along the way, where nowadays it really is quite literally easy for a lot of people to make music on their own, put it on a platform somewhere, and then boom, not that happens often, but when it does happen, it seems like you don't need the system anymore for you to more or less make it, if you will. I think quite a handful of bands out there have done very well for themselves. I think one artist that I think is really good is Lorde, where, who's kind of like just did one song and then her song hit it off, and then all of a sudden she started getting a more a bigger trajectory for her career, where now she's a household name. But she didn't start off that way. That. Yeah, Billie Eilish is like that as well too. I think Flatbush Zombies was another rap group that I know of.
And I adore Billie Eilish. I think she and Phineas are just absolutely brilliant.
I think they changed everything.
She's actually one of my favorite new artists. I listen to a lot of new stuff, man. But anyhow, back to your question.
No, that was pretty much gonna be the end of there, because I was wondering how you feel how things have changed as far as the industry is concerned. Again, be it the local and the mainstream level, that you feel like I'm not sure if you feel like things have, I wouldn't say maybe gotten better, but have gotten a little more accessible to some degree, where you realize that we don't need the system anymore. But because we don't need the system anymore, maybe other things are more harder now, because the things that were accessible for you X amount of years ago that you still have access to, but now there's more stipulations behind whatever it is you're trying to pursue here that would have been much more easier if you had actually stuck with it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think it's something like, what's the stat that there's like 5,000 new albums being added to stuff, like
something like that,
like every week or maybe even every day. I don't know the exact number, but it's an astronomical difference between when we were younger, or when I was, in when I put my first record out when I was 19 or 20, when I was like 19 or 20 years old, you know, you wanted a record deal because otherwise no one was going to hear you, right? You couldn't upload your stuff to YouTube. You couldn't put it on a streaming platform. The best you could do is go to your local music store and try to get them to carry your CD.
Yeah.
You know, so record companies were very valuable at that time because they really controlled who heard what.
Right.
And without backing from someone that was going to put you in front of, you know, something that could get your music on MTV or on the radio. I mean, but once you did, I mean, gosh, if you hit it, you hit it. You sold records, and that's back when selling records made you meant money.
Yeah.
You know, and right now the game has changed to a point where, you know, as you know, living in the podcast world, it's all about your streams.
Yeah.
You know, so I do love that it's much more accessible for you to just be like, you know what, I have an idea. I'm going to record it, and it's probably going to sound pretty good. You know, because back when I was a kid, if you had an idea and you put it on a 4-track recorder, and you know, you really couldn't do anything with it after that, and the sound quality just sounded like trash. But you can get a laptop out and you can make a record, and you know, like speaking of Billie Eilish, you know, she and Phineas did the James Bond. They tracked the James Bond song in
that one.
Well, they tracked that song in the trailer, like after a show.
Yeah.
Like, or on the bus after a show. They didn't even do that in the studio.
Yeah.
You know, so like, I think it's awesome that, you know, younger generation, like my son he doesn't have to wait for the next guitar magazine to come out to learn a song. You know, he can dial it up on YouTube.
Oh yeah. I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah, man. You had to wait for Guitar Magazine to come.
Yeah,
like,
I
I can learn these songs, you know, this week or this month. And now you can can whatever you want to learn, you can dial it up, and it's a beautiful thing. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of kids with a lot of talent really, really fast, because their brains are just soaking it up as fast as they can watch it on YouTube. You know, I've seen all the guys that my son watches, and all the guys that he learns from on that platform, and it's incredible. So in that regard, yeah, I do love how easy it is to put things out, but gosh, it's so much harder. It's such a bigger pond now.
It's oversaturation, I think, to some degree.
Yes.
I would say.
Yeah. You're quite literally just a small fish in a big pond, and it's hard to get your stuff in front of people that are really gonna hear it. But hey, you get that thing, something to go viral, and then you know, we've seen it time and time again from an audience perspective. I mean, when it takes off, it takes off.
Yeah. What's one thing in that respect? Same question, but flipped around, where you realize, okay, this isn't any good. Where you realize that because of the oversaturation, where maybe some quality of music is not up to par, but it's oversaturated, where it's really difficult to find that one. You know, because here's an example. Like, for, you know, I've talked to a lot of people in the industry, and you know, Adam Hampton, for example, and yourself, and various other people that have come across you, where I find something like, this is incredible. Now, if you had asked me this about 2 years ago, about what do you think of these artists you've come across here, I would say they should be huge. My perception has changed a little bit when I say that, because I don't think it's about the fame and glory, because I don't honestly care about that at all. But what I do care about is the exposure, in terms of like the opportunities and what that success could come with that, for you to be able to maintain that passion, if you will, on a full-time basis, make a living out of it, but purely doing it because you love it, and that's the reason why you're doing it, not for the adulation, but more because you love what you do. Mm-hmm. But because of that, I've come across a lot of people that I have to sift through a lot in order for me to find hidden gems, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm curious about your perspective in seeing, you know, there's a lot of great artists out there that are coming out in such a rapid pace, but there's also got to be some other things on the way. You realize that because of this, there's a bunch of the stuff that isn't necessarily very good. And I'm not talking about music or films. I'm just talking about the things about some of the more maybe the possibly the business side of it too, where because local artists are able to get more gigs now, but now more problems comes with it along the way too, that weren't necessarily an issue beforehand, because those availability wasn't there anymore. Now, because there's more access to it, more problems from those particular things that are growing are starting to grow with it as well too. So I'm curious to see from your perspective what you think is becoming an issue, whereas before it wasn't.
I'm not sure I really understand that question.
So, because I'm thinking as I'm talking out loud. So let's say, for example, you get a. Okay, here's an example. Social media following is a big thing.
Yeah.
All right, and I've talked to several people who, in this case, comedian. They're booking a gig. They're well established. They've been in the industry for years, but their social media following is at 12,000 followers. Let's say on Instagram, whatever. But then you have a YouTuber who has been popular from the videos they make, and they want to get into comedy, but they have 5 million followers. So the established comedian who has years and years under the belt and have earned those years, they go to that club and say, hey, by the way, I want to be able to book a gig tonight. I see you have a spot open. Okay, great. Well, how many social media followers do you have? Well, I have 12,000. How long have you had the account open for? 6 months. We'll book you next week. But then 5 million YouTube follower who wants to get into comedy, it says, hey, I want to book a gig tonight. How many followers do you have? Well, I have 5 million. We'll book you in an hour. So what I mean by the problems that present themselves is that there's certain things that weren't an issue before for established artists. Right. And this is just a snippet of an example I'm trying to refer to here. So I'm hoping that maybe you made filter out some of the things you can think of possibly outside of that, where you realize that, this is a problem because now all of a sudden, just because this guy has a bigger following, but he's really not that good. He gets a booking gig because they bring in numbers, but the quality's not up to par. So that's kind of the question.
That's just the way of the world now,
Right.
Because take a look at, I'm a huge boxing fan.
Okay.
I have been all my life. And take a look at the Paul brothers. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Logan Paul and which I'm not saying they're not talented boxers. I mean, I wouldn't want to fight them, but they're getting all these multi-million-dollar purses from pay-per-view events simply because of their YouTube follower status,
right? Not
because of their stature as fighters and their experience as fighters, but because they know people will tune in. So I think you can draw a correlation between that and any other art, like you said, the comedian that doesn't have much experience, but he's got 5 million followers on YouTube, versus the seasoned guy that's got 12,000 followers. I think that's an unfortunate part of where social media has led, society. I think that's just an example. I mean, the examples of that are kind of all over. It's too deep for us to dive into in this podcast, but unfortunately, that's just the way of the world. And I think as established musicians and established artists that have been in the game for a long time but are struggling, I know, people that are, some of my heroes that I look up to have told me, gosh, I just don't know how to get over this hump where I need to get, I hate doing it, but I got to do this social media presence thing because it's necessary, and you gotta build the followers and because people do look at that. And that's just, man, unfortunately, that's just the way things are going. I guess my point is, like it or not, that's just kind of the way it is. And you gotta adapt and evolve.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that too. It's so funny. One of the things that I've come across is that the whole algorithm thing, which that was kind of new to me. Because I actually talked to a comedian, a friend of mine, Lloyd Lee, who was he has his own YouTube channel, and some of the videos he's been posting at the time were getting quite a lot of views, but it was always reactionary videos, which I didn't think was a thing, where people would just watch something and then you get thousands upon thousands of views, especially if you're really.
I'm guilty.
Yeah, well,
I watch those.
Well, I don't have any.
I watch the ones. Not to interrupt you, but I'm a huge comic book movie fan, like the Marvel movies and the DC movies.
Same here, yeah.
And I watched the guys on the New Rock Stars, or I don't know if you've heard of them.
Oh, I know who they are.
The Heavy Spoiler Show.
Yeah.
I'll watch their 25, 30-minute reviews of things.
Well, that's reviews are one thing. So what I'm referring to is more like
the reactions. Yes, I know what you're talking about. So they're sitting around, they'll watch a trailer of a movie and yeah.
So I do. This is somebody kind of hard. So I hope Patrick doesn't mind because he's the guy that runs our channel here. But So it's not my cup of tea. It's not something that I really enjoy doing. I don't hate it by any means, but you know, when we do the show again, I hope Patrick does not mind me saying this here, but when we do the show, I'm like,
have him react to it.
You know, well, you have to react to it, but I just can't really get into it like that because I did two of my own personal reaction reviews. And I remember at the time when I was doing it, I just did not want to do it. I did it for, you know, maybe it will help with the algorithm. Like I did it for business purposes rather than for my own personal enjoyment, if you will. You know, and I'm not gonna lie, there are some things I did enjoy about reacting to it, but then I realized, okay, you have to say something now. You have to talk. And so that's the producer side of it coming out where like, okay, you gotta inquire. And I'm like, man, this does not feel very authentic for me personally to be able to do that. And then I didn't realize too at the time that, because I was so naive at that point where you have these guys that are reacting like, oh my God, especially when they're reacting to like Marvel movies or whatever. And there's a big reveal in the trailer and everyone's like, whoa. I won't say who.
Well, I watched those too.
I've watched those too. But when I was watching some of them, someone pointed out that why I know someone who did that. And that reaction is not real. That is purely for the camera.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, so you could really have to put on an act.
Yeah.
And then I realized that, and it works because these guys are getting numbers, but in reality, they're just watching stuff and they're like, "This is really good." So then they watch it again because they know the peaks. Okay, so when this happens, act like so they're directing themselves. And I didn't realize, the investment in that respect that comes with that, and that helps with the algorithm, especially if you're really popular. And even some guys who are not known YouTubers at all, they react to something and boom, that one video gets 60,000 plus views. Then the next one gets like 300 or 200, whatever the case may be. And you're realizing, so what's the system? How does it actually work? What's the formula? I don't buy the algorithm very much, to be honest with you at all.
You know what I draw that correlation to, like in old time mediums, is like, that's like tabloid stuff for me. Right.
Yeah,
so like,
I agree.
You know what I mean? Like when we were kids and you'd see the, what was the big one? The National Enquirer.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
They sold all those, they sold all those made up stories, you know?
Yeah.
It was made up, but people obviously loved them because they made a lot of money and they bought the magazine. Or it's like you see the people on Instagram that are like, pose like they're doing stuff for charity and then it's just for a picture and then they're off. You know, so like, like all that stuff that is so disingenuous. I mean, it bothers me. Like when I see like all the videos that you see are people like taking food to the homeless people or, you know, just for the camera opportunities. And you're just like, man, come on. Like, there's no soul in it, but I think history will tell you that there's always a market for whatever that evolves into next. That's why I bring up the tabloid stuff, because that's what I chalk it up to. Like, so that stuff's just going to be replaced by something else even more ridiculous, you know, down the road. It's just part of the cycle.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but yeah, it's because I kind of went off on a tangent about this here, but yeah, I hate the whole algorithm aspect of it too, because if you want to get certain views or whatever the case may be, even if you try to meet those I wouldn't say expectations, but if you meet those requirements, sometimes it never even works. And then something else comes up on the way because it's constantly evolving where you just have to keep up with the Joneses in that respect. And I don't have the patience to even do that. So, I mean, it's funny because, you know, I think maybe you've experienced it for yourself too, where people may have come up and say, "Hey, listen, you're really good at this, but why don't you try this? Because that way you can get more exposure and doing so on and so forth." So
that's it. Going back to your question of like my least favorite thing about like my shows and stuff, or something that people will say to me at my shows, is I'll randomly get those people that come up to me and go, "Hey, let me help you build your Instagram followers." It's like, man, if they like my stuff and they want to follow me, then great. But like when you find yourself paying for stuff like that, and we're paying people to, you know, to get followers that really don't mean anything. I mean, you're just going to show you a number. I guess it helps So maybe I should consider it.
Well, it's
but
funny
at the end of the day, it's like, man, I don't know.
I talked to there's someone that I know, Gary Kearns, who I think is an incredible actor too. But I've talked to him on before on my show, and I'm still keep up with him since then. But we talked about that, and he was talking about how there are people out there that work with various companies that will, if you notice, if you look at the numbers, like for example, a guy who has that blue star, but you notice he has, let's say, over 100,000 followers, but look at the amount of likes that they have. So they have a video, they'll have X amount of views, but it's a couple thousand. And then you look at someone like The Rock, who is vastly popular and deservedly so, because he's good at what he does and he's held up for that. So everything he puts out, 9 times is going to get well over 1 million views or well over 1 million likes, whatever the case may be. But he has a team of people that can help with that for the right reason. Hey, I'm busy doing my films and other things. So in that respect, I understand that's helpful for him because he's extremely busy. But when Gary was talking about how there are companies out there that will help you with those numbers, and then when those numbers go up, and then that one person that helped out with those numbers is gone, all of a sudden those numbers are stagnant or start to drop. And he's like, you realize that there are people out there who know those algorithms, they know what hits and what will not hit, and that's their job. They're constantly watching that fluctuation, and it's about hitting those check marks. And it is people's jobs to purposely look out for that and help with those numbers to bring it up and so on and so forth. And oddly enough, I actually laughed out loud once when I got a direct message. Hey, we can help you with your numbers. And I was like, what?
I get those all the time, man.
You got those too? Yeah. And I was like,
I get them like every day. Yeah.
So someone was really looking out for you, because for me, I got them like once in a blue moon. And when I get them, I laugh because the first one I saw, I thought it was a joke. And I didn't respond back to the person, but then I got another one. I think the same person, like a week or so later, say, "Hey, we're just following up with you again. Are you still interested?" And I was like, "Oh, this is legit." I was like, no, I just deleted it and didn't even bother looking.
Yeah, I've never even responded to one of those.
Yeah. But it's interesting though, because I think that is one thing that has constantly changed, where I'm not the biggest fan of here, and I think that's the one thing that I realize that things will never be the same in that respect. I think when it comes to bringing more awareness, whereas word of mouth is no longer the way of promotion like it used to be. I mean, I'm not sure if that's how you feel from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, my popularity locally has been strictly word of mouth.
Okay.
And I really don't do a lot to book my gigs. Like, I'm not making a lot of calls. It's been very organic for me. I'll get called from time to time, and honestly, I don't really have the time to make the calls to book my shows, and I don't have an agent, so I just rely on the venues calling me, going, "Hey, do you want to come play?" And that's worked out pretty good for me. Every now and again, I'll beat the streets and try to get something. If I see someone coming that I'd like to open up for, I'll really try to get that going. But yeah, I prefer my growth to be organic rather than manufactured.
I agree. I told you before in the beginning that I had checked out the episode you went on Play It Loud, and because of what I had seen and what I had heard, I personally had connected with what you were putting out there. And then, listening to you talk and share your story along the way too, with, the various bandmates you have come across, and some have become more or less like family along the way too, that it opens up a different part of the country that I'm not familiar with here at all, to see how the scene is like out there. And then hearing your story along the way that kind of more or less help formulate that, those ideas and the connection, the relationships you've had along the way. And, I think one thing that the show has done very good on is, even though it is a cap about 25 minutes, 30 minutes there's still so much that I got out of here, because one, Adam had done a really good job in asking those questions that brought the best, I thought, out of you.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's great at the interviews. Yeah.
He's phenomenal in my opinion too. But because of that, I had decided to look into more of your work to see, to be frank with you, if that's consistent outside of from what I saw in the episode. Because a lot of times I've come across it too, or check something out. Not with Play It Loud, of course, but I'm talking about other things like that was great, and all of a sudden you find everything else is kind of like, well, that was all. So, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because I really was curious to get your perspective on how you see yourself along the way, but more important, how you feel like you have progressed as a person because of those said journeys and said records you put out there, but at the same time, what you expect out of yourself along the way. And quite frankly, you seem to be pretty even keel. I'm sure if I talked to you 20 years beforehand, it might have been a different person that would have been talking there, and maybe the answers wouldn't have been the same as it is now. Sure. But there's a part of me that does believe that the curiosity and the drive was still there.
Oh, absolutely.
Wherever it would have gone at that point, at that time, who knows what it would have been, at least for me in asking those questions. So I find that to be really interesting about you, because I think that what I've come across here so far with you, learning more about your background and learning more about your perspective on various sides of the industry and in the music and so on, that I'm curious, because being that you're from a part of the country that I have never visited, but to hear that from your perspective, being from the area, it shows that we're all not that different here. And I think that's something that I try to accomplish, because what I love to do is, I'm not saying that, what you talking to me this is gonna happen. Obviously not, but I do hope that one day what would happen is that someone would listen to this and say, I like what this guy had to say, and therefore I'm going to listen to his music now, because I heard what they said was really interesting, unique. Therefore, I would take the time to invest.
The thing is that I've gotten to know about audiences is they know when something is legit, and when something is manufactured.
Right.
And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like when you're honesty goes a long way, and honesty in your art and being true to yourself translates over to the audience. And I think me, as someone who is the audience, I value that. And a lot of the people I listen to, or whether it's podcasts, whether it's musicians, whether it's comedians, when you can see the honesty come through, it makes me appreciate it more.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I try to be very careful when I look for who I want to talk with, because that's exactly what I'm looking for, the honesty, if it's consistent across the board. Because quite a people I've looked out to and wanted to speak with, and I find something's like, I can't connect with that. And then my research and my investment, I just kind of got put to a halt, because
when it's not genuine, man, people can sniff that out real fast.
Oh yeah. So with that being said, though, I'm actually looking forward to see what you have coming up here, because I think from what I've heard here so far, as far as your music is concerned and your take on the various type of bands you've covered and musicians you cover as well too, I'm actually a really big fan of what you do. And I told this to Adam Hampton before, where I said to him that this guy, Adam Aguilar, is really, really good. And he's like, he's a friend of mine. I was like, please tell him he's got a fan in me.
Oh, thanks, man. So, well, ditto. I think you're great at interviewing people, and I'm a fan as well. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, well, I appreciate the kind of words here. But so I guess for the cameras here, I will say to you, thank you so much again for taking the time to speak with me, because I know you have a very busy schedule. And until next time, I would love to have this conversation with you again and pick up from where we last left off here.
Absolutely, brother.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead.